Hello everyone, I'm Toby from abletondrummer.com. I want to show you my one-button live looping device for Ableton Live. Max for Live is needed for that one. So this was quite a long journey to get here. I looked into different techniques for live looping, but found this one here, which is great for spontaneous live looping, or even if you just want to jam and record your jam and edit stuff each layer separately afterwards. If you want to get some great visual feedback, check out this device. So here's let us go through the general concept here. So you get this one device which needs to sit on a MIDI track, because you're controlling. You can send in MIDI in here for controls via your MIDI controller. You can MIDI map that, of course, as well. And you get this big window here which you can open and close. And this one is resizable as well. So the cool thing here is you might want to have multiple loopers here, or you even might want to have a lot of loopers here, which is all limited by the system, like what your computer and your external sound card can handle. Okay, so how does it work? It needs to be set up the following. It controls from a MIDI track the next track, and you can set the number of tracks you want to control. It can control up to 10 tracks, which would mean you can record up to 10 layers for each with each device here. So this could be audio and MIDI, or audio and MIDI together. So if you have different setup here where you're maybe recording your voice and then recording some from a MIDI keyboard here, this is all possible via one or inside one looper instance here. Okay, so let me just quickly show you. So this button here needs to be clicked or pressed or controlled via MIDI controller. And once you click on it, it needs to be refreshed. It needs the different MIDI inputs here. Sorry, I need to set this up. So obviously you need to have a MIDI input or an audio input available here. So okay, so if I press this now, you can see it will record on the next one if the global launch quantization is set to 1 bar, which it is per default, and that's probably the best way to do it or to start out with. And then if I press it again, this first layer is being re-looped here. So this is quite easy to understand, I guess. So it's actually doing the same like clicking on an empty clip slot in Ableton Live while it is armed, and then it's recording, and then if you press it again, it is playing. But if you want to have a lot of layers, you would need to set up a lot of MIDI mappings here, which you don't need anymore because you got the live looping device here, the one button live looper. So this is doing this automatically, and as you can see, you can use this as well to auto arm on and off. You can switch, you can activate this or deactivate this depending on your setup. So you can see now it's not being armed, but as soon as I press the button here, it's being armed on for the recording, so it can actually record, and it's being turned off again. So this is a big advantage of the looper here. Depending on how you're setting up your monitors here, this is really important, because you don't want to get all the audio volume, for example, or all the MIDI being routed into all tracks on the same time while they're not recording. Okay, so this is one way to do it. Obviously, we have the basic functions of a looper here. In the big window, you can click them directly. So if a clip is playing, we can stop this clip. So now, boom, this clip is stopping. We could delete all clips with this X here. So all the clips, if there would be clips in here, just to show you, if I now click X, all the clips are getting deleted. And if I want to go back during a live performance and maybe I had like, I want to record the last layer again, I have the undo button here. Okay, so if I have clips present here already and I just want to play the clips without recording anything, I can press on the play button here, and this will be triggered as well if I click on here. So the first clip is gonna play now while I'm triggering the recording of the next one. I can unlink this if I don't want this button to have this behavior. So now if I'm pressing this, it's only recording, it's not playing the existing clips here. Okay, so all those controls can be seen in this resizable window here, or can be MIDI mapped even in this window here. You can save the window position. So if you have a lot of loopers or looper devices here, you might want to set up 4 windows here, set them to the size you need, and you can press S. And when you're opening up your Ableton Live set, the window will open in this position and in this size. So I can open and close this. I can even automate open and close here as well if I need to. So the zoom can be changed here, the size. And I can move this around anywhere I need it to. Press S and it will be stored at this place and reopened again. If for any reason, maybe you're using a second screen in the studio and you have all your loopers device on the second screen, and then you play a show, and on your show all you don't have a second screen, you're just using like your MacBook Pro or your laptop or whatever, and then all the windows are stored somewhere on a screen which isn't available because you're not bringing your second screen to the show maybe, then you might just want to press reset window position down below here, and it will set it back to the original window position. You have another save window position button in the main device here, which is this one. So pressing this one will save it, or you have the S button for saving it here as well. Cool. Okay, so let's go through the different functions we got here first. And what is really important for you to control tracks number here. So this is like the first thing you should set up. So this will determine how many tracks, so how many layers you want to control. So obviously this needs to be set right for the device to work. So for example, if I say, well, I want another layer to be added, or I maybe want 10 layers here, you know, if I now set up, let's duplicate all those layers, meaning tracks in this case. So I now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I got 10 layers in total, and this would be the default setup when you're opening up the device. Control tracks would be on 10. So now I can control 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 tracks here via this one device. This always needs to be set up to the exact amount, because otherwise the device might gonna control tracks which are behind the tracks you want to control actually, or they are not enough. So make sure to set this right. Always press refresh here, because the device needs to collect the information, needs to collect like all the different tracks positions you are controlling here. So as you have seen in the beginning, I'm recording now to scene number 1. And obviously, if I don't want to record and to play with scene number 1, I could set a different scene here as well. So let's take scene number 3, for example, press refresh, and now you can see it's recording in the 3rd scene here instead of the first one, if that's needed at all. I guess most people don't need it, so just leave it to 1 if you don't need that. Okay, so you can always check if you're controlling the right amount of tracks here via the all instant arm on or arm off. So if I click on instant arm on, you can see those 10 tracks are being controlled here. If I set this down all arm off, you can see, okay, I'm controlling the right tracks here. And that might be something which is nice for when you're starting out a gig and you set at home when you were rehearsing, and you might have set like something like this, and you're not seeing this, so you can automate this as well via clips, dummy clips, to make sure that all your tracks are in the state they should be when you start performing or when you start recording. Okay, so now let's have a look on how you can control the one button live looper via external MIDI devices, MIDI hardware. So MIDI controllers could look like this. So this is like the FCB 1010 from Roland, inexpensive, but it is quite big, and you could have all those buttons sending MIDI notes. For example, you could use a smaller device, something like this, and there are tons of different MIDI controllers out there. So there are two concepts of MIDI mapping here in Ableton Live for this device. So the one, you might be aware of that already. So you could just go into the MIDI map menu and you have the possibility to map those different buttons which are triggering those different functions directly in the pop-up window. And that's something which I would advise you to do, use the actual buttons in the device itself and the main device sitting on the track. So now MIDI map on off. So if I now trigger this, you can see it's playing and the recording. I could do undo, I could delete all clips, I could stop all clips. Okay, so sometimes the pop-up window, the MIDI map menu in the pop-up window gets, there are different layers, visually different layers, and you might not always be able to access everything straight away. So you can always go into the MIDI mappings window here and delete certain mappings you want to get rid of by just selecting those, delete. You can as well open and close the window if you can't access stuff here, and then this should be available if you reopened the window. But as I said, it's probably the best to focus on the ones in the main device here. Just use those. And that's a good thing here as well, if you have two MIDI controllers, maybe you want to add another stop button on another stop button control via a second external MIDI controller here. So this way you are able to do that by mapping in the main device, mapping one controller, and in the pop-up window mapping a second controller. So this is like the standard MIDI map control thingy here in Ableton Live. There's one thing I want to mention. If you're sending MIDI notes via MIDI map to Ableton Live, you have to usually you have to press them twice, because the MIDI map menu on the buttons here is only listening to MIDI on messages. So you need to press once a button to turn it on, then again to turn it off, and then being able to turn it on again. So obviously this is crap. For using stuff live, you just want to press a button once and happening. So what I did was I added a momentary function here, so the device takes care of this automatically. If you're sending MIDI control change or continuous control change messages, you might want to set this to toggle mode. So just map it, and then you see if it's acting like you want it to, and if not, try to set it to toggle behavior. So because your MIDI controller might send an off via the CC anyways. But for most people, so just leave this to momentary, because you're most likely sending MIDI notes here anyways. Okay, so this would be the native MIDI map thingy, which is provided via Ableton Live here. I added another opportunity. You are able to send MIDI messages directly. So for example, I got the X-Touch Mini here, and I'm routing this MIDI directly into this track here. So if I now just quickly delete all of my MIDI mappings, I go to the MIDI browser window here. So I can actually use different buttons here directly, the MIDI notes here, route this into the track and set those up to trigger those functions here. So you are sending a MIDI note pitch of whatever here with this note, and you can see this would now trigger a sound. Actually, it would be treated like a MIDI piano controller here. So if you want to use it this way, which is a good thing, because direct MIDI notes is not going via like a visual UI thingy here. So it's like, from a programming perspective, it's more straight to the point here actually. So if you want to use that, you just let's say we want to use the record from here, and I'm now activating this direct MIDI note input. Press S, and now it's waiting for me to press a button to play a note, you could say so, and it will detect the note automatically, and I can do this with all of those here. And now I have the control. Let's leave that one off because I don't have enough buttons. So I can now control the stuff directly via my MIDI controller, via MIDI notes. So one advantage here is it's direct MIDI notes, not going via a MIDI mapping over a visual device. That's one advantage. Second advantage is that I now can save this device here as a preset in my user library, which means when I recall this from my user library, it will remember all the different MIDI note pitches I put in here. So the native MIDI map menu doesn't let you do this. So I could map this now to different buttons via MIDI map, store this in my user library, and if I open this one up in a different Ableton Live set, those aren't being stored. So if you want to have like presets for your different MIDI controllers via direct MIDI note input, you can do it this way. I just showed you. Just turn on the different MIDI note inputs here. You press S for automatic detecting, bam, and now the redo button is triggered via this A-2 via this button here. Another great feature for visual feedback on this device here is that you actually get circles from, or you can get circles being showing like the length and the play time of your first two loops. So if we now record something here, ooh, Metronome is loud. So, and if this is now being retriggered, you can see we get the circle here, which is representing the first layer, the first track we are controlling here. So this one is showing this length here. So if we now have record a shorter loop into layer 2, recording now, and just one bar, you can see, oh, it's the same length. Let's do this again. Press undo, and let's do this again. Maybe let's do 2 bars then. First bar, 2 bar. So now we can see a yellow line, which is the second loop, which is taking twice as long. It's twice the length. It's 2 bars instead of 1 bar like the first loop. And you are able, if you want those, if you don't want those, you can switch those circles view on and off here. So if I just want to see the first circle, I just have to activate the first circle, and if I want to have the second one only, I can have the second one only here. So one more cool thing is here, because those colors of the circles are being determined by the colors of those tracks. So if we want to pick a different color, let's pick blue, and if we now refresh the device, you can see the second circle inside here is turning to a different color. Let's do the same for the first track here, or for the first loop. You can see now, yeah, those colors are being changed accordingly to the different track colors you have set up here. If you're changing the track color, you have to press refresh once. If you're reloading the Ableton Live set, it's doing that automatically, obviously, every time on the start. One more thing for having some visual control on which controller you are using here. So, for example, if we have 2 controllers, we want to know like which one is which one. So if we duplicate the first track, just to quickly show you. So we now have 2 looper devices, and we might need to reopen the window, especially if you're duplicating stuff. It's not the nicest way. It's probably the most beautiful way to grab another instant of the device on a new fresh track, so you don't get any bugs like you just seen here. Cool. Okay, so we now have those 2 loopers, and if you have a lot of loopers, you might want to know like which looper is that? What am I controlling? So you could set the names of the tracks you could change the name of the tracks. Let's say looper control 2, for example, control. And if I now press refresh on the device, you can see that the name here in the top bar will change to this name here, Looper Control 2. Okay, so this way you are able, if you have a lot of loopers or if you just want to make sure the loopers are in the right order, give those tracks, they are sitting on a good name, and then press refresh. Or again, if you're opening up the Ableton Live set, those will be refreshed automatically. So we now went through all the different functions the looper device itself has, and now we are looking into how you can use it for your use case. So the advantage of Ableton Live is you can set up things the way you need them. So this could be the challenge on the same time, because you have to set up the things like you need them. So I'm going to show you a few examples here how I would go for this approach. And obviously there are different approaches, and people are going to end up using it in a weird way, but it's going to meet their needs. So yeah, you need to experiment a little here. I created a template as well where you get like this setup I'm preparing here now into different tracks as well, which is included when you buy this device. You can just download this and open this, and you are kind of ready to go. Just set your inputs right. Okay, so let's have a look. So first of all, we maybe let's start from the beginning just to make sure we're on the same page here. So obviously first, you would need one track, which needs to be a MIDI track with the device on there. Okay, so this will be like your first track, looper 1, it's called here. So now you need to decide like how many tracks do I want to control. Like per default, it's good to say let's have 10 tracks. Why not? 10 layers. I mean, if you need less, just take out a few. So let's create a few MIDI tracks here. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And those tracks are the tracks which are now being controlled. Maybe let's set them all, make them all a little bit smaller. Yeah, okay, so we are now controlling track 2 to track number 11, which is 10 tracks in total. And those tracks are now being controlled. So this is one really important thing here. You have to set the number of tracks you want to control with this looper instances right, because otherwise it's going to conflict, because it's going to control some different tracks you don't want to control. So just to give you an example, if I want to control 5 tracks, let's make this example. So let's say I only have 5 tracks here. I want to control 5 layers, you could say. You need to set this control tracks number here to 5, obviously. Put this in, press refresh, just to make sure you're now only controlling those 5 tracks. So if you have, let's say you have another track behind here, which is like maybe whatever, it's a beats track where you're playing some beats or whatever, yeah. So you don't want to control this track here. If you don't want to control this track here, your looper number needs to be set to 5, so it's only controlling 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tracks up to here, and not this one. Okay, so let's put this back to 10 again. Here we go. No, it's not. It's okay. So let's just duplicate those. So we now have those 10 tracks here we want to control. Let's set the control tracks to 10, which is per default. You press refresh just to make sure. And now you're controlling those tracks here. So I picked MIDI tracks for this example because it's easier to record stuff in here. So I now can select all those tracks, press Command G, or select group tracks here now, and now I have all those tracks together in this one thing here, which is good to have, because if I want to use multiple samples as loopers, it's gonna get quite messy if I have like 40 tracks open. Yeah, it's not that easy. So let's say this could be looper 1, and this is gonna be the looper 1 group here. So I have this the controlling track in here where the device is sitting on, and I'm controlling those 10 other tracks inside this looper here. So this is really nice and clear to control. Okay, so for setting up stuff, audio recordings here, you might want to follow this advice I'm giving you here now, you might gonna end up with a different concept, but please try out this technique so you get an idea of what I'm talking about. Because, and by the way, this is like the example which is included when you buy the device as a template. So, you can see here right now, Ableton Live is not sending out any audio. So if there is no recording happening, no audio is being sent out. So some use cases, this makes sense. For some use cases, you want to hear like what kind of effect do you have to get a feeling of like, yeah, of your voice. And if you're recording voice, for example, if you're looping your voice. So I'm going to set up a second MIDI track, a second audio track here, and I pitched my voice up just to make this real obvious, which voice is now coming from Ableton Live and which voice is coming directly from this video recording. So if I turn this on, you can see this on this track here. Yes, I have this effect now. So if I turn this off, you just hear my normal voice. If I turn this on, you can hear my voice like Mickey Mouse style. Okay, so I'm gonna turn this off and on just to make sure you get what I'm talking about here. So for example, if I want to record some stuff and want to be able that the audio is being passed through, I would set up the following. So all those recording tracks here, they should be set to monitor off. So if the track is a little bit smaller, it's shown in a drop-down menu. If it's a bit bigger, the track, it's showing in this style here, in. And now you can see, because it's set to in, I'm already getting this. And you don't want this to set up like this, because if you have 10 tracks set up like in, it's going to get louder and louder and louder. And you don't want the layer tracks to pass through your audio, your live audio. You just want them to pass through the stuff you are already, only the stuff you recorded. So with this technique, you can do it this way. So I have this track here, which is my voice in track. And this one is set to in. It's turned off at the moment now because I don't want you to hear my Mickey Mouse voice all the time. But in a live situation, this would be on all the time. And then you would need to set the input for those layers, like where should they get their audio from. You would need to set those to this track here. So if you have effects on your track, a nice reverb or whatever, that would be cool to use those effects already and send those to print those on the layers here if you want to. You don't have to do it this way, but that's one possibility. So what you want to do is you want to route all those tracks, the layer tracks. You select those and then you change the external from to the track you're using for your audio input. And you can see now already you get those signs here. They can be receive the audio pre-effects, so without any effects processing. Post-effects and post-mixer as well would mean you the level here would, the fader here, the track volume here would determine like how much level those tracks would get as well. Okay, so I'm just gonna do this to show you. I'm gonna turn this on now and it's gonna sound pretty weird. Bam, bam, bam. So now I'm gonna record something. I can't hear the metronome because it needs to go out here as well. Okay, so let's refresh the looper device just to make sure we have all the right tracks being in here. And the first recording, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes. And you can hear this is like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is only playing back the stuff which was recorded. So let's try to sum this up because this is going quite deep. So in most cases, in most live looping cases, you want to be able to hear the audio signal you're sending through all the time. And you want to be able to only have the layer sending the tracks in the background, sending audio through once they have stuff recorded on there. So this would be the technique to set this up. As I said before, this is provided as a template in the pack when you buy the one button looper. So as I said earlier, you are able to automate things here as well via a dummy clip. So let's have a look on the looper track here. So if we create an empty MIDI clip, and we can just do this by double clicking on an empty clip slot. So now we're getting an empty clip here, and if we go to the envelope section, we can see we have a lot of things we could automate here. And to be honest, I think this is really made for live looping stuff. So it's more for people using MIDI controllers and deciding on the gig, like maybe pressing this to record, pressing this to reloop. There are a few things you might want to have like set up. So for example, track arm automations. So if you want to make sure you're opening your Ableton Live set and all those tracks shouldn't be armed or should be armed depending on what kind of process you're going here for. So this all arm on, all arm off can be automated as well, and you should do this only via track arm automation here. So because you're getting track arm on and off as breakpoints, you can set breakpoints here. So if I play this clip now, oops, let's turn off the metronome. So you can hear now, so you can see now I'm pressing anything here, but this can be automated. So if you want to make sure at the beginning, for example, you're set when you're playing live, everything is set right, all tracks arm off, you can just have this like here. I'm just going to turn some on manually. So this dummy clip here now, if you play this one, you can see it's turning all those off. Let's have a second breakpoint. It needs to switch. Sorry, it needs to switch from all arm on to arm off. And now all of those clips are being set to off. So another way of automation here, and I mean this goes for all the functions you have in here. Pop-up window automation should be used via the bottom one here. Track number, if you need this, I'm not sure if that's like good for a live setup, but just like all those functions are in here if you want to check them out. One more automation thing which is especially interesting for performance would be, let's say you want to record a harmony, singing your voice, and you want to record on layer 1 for 2 bars, on layer 2 for 2 bars, and layer 3 for 2 bars, but you don't want to press all the time rec loop, like reloop, I mean. So you can set this up. So you could create a dummy clip here. We already have a clip here. Let's go to the notes section. So let's say we want to have this button here, the main trigger looper, being triggered like every 2 bars, like record, reloop, record, reloop, record, reloop. So we could do this via MIDI notes. So for example, if I set up a note here, let's say C-1, and let's put this one right here on number 4, count 4 I mean. So I'm now sending out this MIDI note here, and I need to set up the looper to listen to MIDI notes for triggering. So I could just press the S and hit the loop once, and as soon as it's going over this MIDI note here, the looper detects a C1. Okay, so it's now synced to C1. So if I now press this loop, you will see that as soon as this is going over here, it triggers a recording. Okay, so now we are not doing any external MIDI control here. We are doing MIDI note control to trigger a recording and relooping via a MIDI note inside of this clip. So as we have set this up to 1 bar, record quantization, which is the one most people are gonna use. Let's set this clip a bit longer. Zoom in again. Zoom to the right place. So now the first note is gonna trigger recording. The second note is gonna trigger reloop. And maybe let's do it like this to just show you. So if I set up a second MIDI note here, the second MIDI note, the first one is gonna start recording or gonna trigger recording, and then the next note is gonna trigger reloop. So let's play this clip and we can see this one triggering recording. It's now recording, and if it's getting to this note, it's gonna trigger reloop. Okay. So if we have this set up for one loop, we could do this for another loop as well, recording another loop. So we're gonna put in a third note for restarting looping, and then do another one for relooping. So it's record, reloop, record, reloop. So we got those 4 notes here now. So if I now trigger this clip, you can see it's gonna trigger recording starting on the next one. It's recording now, you can see that it's relooping and recording via those 2 notes here, and then reloop again. So now, without having to press or to click anything here, just this triggering this MIDI dummy clip, I could set up looping for a set amount of bars being retriggered, and I don't have to press anything. So my example in the beginning, my practical example was, I want to record a harmony, like 2 or let's say 3 loops, let's say 2 loops here, but only for 2 bars each. But I don't want to hit like recording and relooping all the time. I want to have the setup automatically, and this would be my option here now. So if I press this clip here now, on the next one recording, I could do my harmony. I can't do harmony, so that's why I'm not showing you this. And then do the next harmony. Just imagine I could sing, and now I have those 2 loops for 2 bars being recorded automatically without having to touch more stop, reloop. So there are a few functionalities you might need for live looping, for your live looping concept, and there are more devices of mine, more Max for Live devices of mine you can use for the certain functionality you need. Just get those. There are links in the video description. I don't have all released right now, but I will update the links in this video description. So let's have a look on the first one, which would be setting up a fixed clip length recording. This would mean if you have a device, if you have a track, where or you have a setup where you're only going to record for 2 bars on this track, on the certain track, you can apply this functionality to each track you want it to for. So here is the fixed clip length track recording device. So if this is set to 2 bars, for example, and if I now trigger recording, you can see I'm doing nothing, but the clip will record and replay automatically after 2 bars. Yes, so this is what this is doing here. There is another device for setting up and auto switching a metronome here. So if we delete this clip again, let's get rid of the fixed length recording. And I thought it would be practical, or for my use case, it's practical to have a click, the metronome being turned on automatically if there is no clip in my first track here, or in the track I'm applying this device to. So I get a click for the first recording, and then it automatically turns off. So if this device is being turned on, I could set the scene to observe. In most cases that would be the first scene. And if I record something now, you can hear the metronome is on. 2, 3, 4, and now the metronome is turning off automatically as soon as you record it and replay a clip in this track you applied this device to. Okay, so let's get rid of this device to show you another one, which is auto quantizing. And quantizing, I'm sure people are aware of what it means for MIDI. It means like if you played 16s tick, and you weren't playing them really accurate, you can apply a quantization to it after the recording, obviously, because it's not a device which can see in the future. So you're recording your 16s, and as soon as you restart or reloop the clip, it will put the MIDI notes to the values you are selecting here and to the amount you are selecting here. So 100% will set them really straight to 16th notes, and the same goes for audio as well. So it will be warped. It will detect if you use a shaker playing 16s, and if they're not really accurate, you could auto warp those transients being set to 16s here as well. So this is a really cool device for making sure, especially when like your first layer you're recording here should be quite accurate, so that you can orientate for your further layer recordings here. You can use this device. Again, those are separate devices which needs to be bought separately. The links are in the video description, and check them out. I will add a few more because there are more functionalities which are good for live looping. Okay, so this was quite a long run through all the different functions and all the different add-ons and all like some different techniques you can use here for live looping. I hope you understood everything. You might gonna come back to some chapters in the future here. Just have a look on the different chapter marks I put in here. So if you have further questions, I do online teaching as well. So I help musicians and artists to find the right approach, to add the right thing here. I do custom Max for Live devices, custom solutions for people here as well. Get in contact if you want to book me for some online session. You find the contact details at abletondrummer.com. Okay, so happy looping, and catch you soon. Bye bye.